A young girl's inner voice trembles. I'm scared. Fleeing through the woods, the purple-haired girl feels like a criminal despite her innocence. Bruised and tearful, she longs to see her father and brother again. As she insists it's all a misunderstanding, a bloody bear trap snaps shut on the ground. She falls toward the vicious trap, her face a mask of pure terror. Two guards apprehend the fallen girl, identifying her as Siesta Hentinen and ordering her capture. The scene shifts to the dark, foreboding entrance of a cave. A guard shoves Siesta into a makeshift cell, ordering her to be quiet. Huddled in the darkness, she laments her failed hope for a peaceful life this time around. Two men appear outside her cell, one coldly asking if she is still alive. Siesta recognizes her father, who interrupts her journey only to deliver a chilling command. He wants her to die right there. Betrayed and confused, she desperately asks her family why she has to die. She understands that her brother Hans is the heir, and her existence is a blemish that must be removed. Memories of past lives flash before her eyes, being burned at the stake and sent to the guillotine, all for her brother's sake. She tearfully begs her father and brother not to abandon her. Her father coldly declares that a cursed child has no worth, and she tearfully accepts his judgment. She despairs, realizing her father will never see her as his daughter, though she always yearned for his love. In a last flicker of hope, she smiles and calls out to her brother for help. A cruel voice answers, telling her she should be happy to die for him. Her brother, Hans, smirks with pure, undisguised malice. Siesta confronts him about his broken promise to save her, but he callously recalls how she begged for help in a past life, claiming he had no choice. He then feigns ignorance, coolly stating he doesn't remember any past life. His thoughts drift to a sweet, blonde-haired girl named Elmer, believing she is all he needs. Enraged, he grabs Siesta's hair, screaming that she, a cursed one, can't compare to Elmer and that her hair color is a disgrace. She cries out in pain, pleading for him to stop. Leaning in with a sinister smile, he tells her that no one will mourn her when she dies. Her eyes widen in horror as the finality of his hatred sinks in. Realizing it was all a trap, she watches as Hans mockingly pats her head, confirming she's just a nuisance to him. He leans closer, his voice dripping with venom as he calls her a good, obedient sister. Looking down at her bloodied feet, she accepts that she has been abandoned once again. She reflects on her tragic fate, having been betrayed and killed 9 times already. And yet, each time, she had foolishly clung to the hope that the next life would be different. A memory surfaces of her brother lavishing extravagant jewelry on Elmer. Elmer's joyful gratitude is a stark contrast to Siesta's own experiences. Siesta bitterly recalls that it was always Elmer, the adopted child, who was cherished over her, the true daughter. A family crest is shown. As narration explains, the Hentinen family has always had dark hair for generations, but Siesta's different hair color marked her from birth, and she was branded the cursed child. Her entire life has been defined by the chains of this curse. She recalls a rare moment of kindness when her brother gave her a gift, telling her to wear it. She remembers her own pure, unadulterated happiness as she thanked him. The gift was a beautiful, ornate bracelet with inset blue gems. But now, looking at the same bracelet on her wrist, she scoffs at the stupid thing. She seethes with rage, knowing they are oblivious to the 9 times she has died for them. Vowing to never forgive them, she feels a power stir as the bracelet on her wrist begins to glow. A spectral chain bearing the faces of her father and brother shatters into pieces. As a butterfly pattern glows within her eye, she resolves that nothing will take her freedom again. Luminous blue butterflies begin to swarm around her as she wonders if someone has come to take her away. As a single butterfly lands in her hair, she feels her time running out once more. She reflects on her past lives, lamenting that she was a fool to waste so much time desperately seeking love. The purple-haired woman vows never to cry again. With a powerful gleam in her eye, she promises revenge. She awakens in a field of flowers, surrounded by butterflies. She realizes she has returned again, recalling that blue butterflies always appear after her death, sending her back to age 16. From a window, she watches a happy couple, likely her family. She laments wasting 10 lives trying to earn her father and brother's love, only to realize they considered her worthless. A dark web symbolizes the trap she was caught in. Returned 2 years in the past, she bemoans her haggard appearance. Fixing her messy fringe reminds her of a man who once asked if she cut it herself, to which she nervously agreed. She remembers how happy she was when he praised her attitude and said her hairstyle suited her. She now realizes his praise was sarcasm and curses her past foolishness. She recalls being ignored and dismissed by her family ever since her mother's death. Realizing they ridiculed her attempts at self-improvement out of fear, her resolve hardens. She remembers being hunted down and killed in a past life. In a past life, she desperately tried to teleport to her family for help. To her horror, her teleportation magic failed repeatedly, leaving her trapped and helpless. She finally understands the bracelet her brother gave her was meant to suppress her powers. She remembers her past self's desperate denial, unable to believe her brother would betray her. The soldiers capture her, identifying her as Siesta Heitinen. Now she plans to use her family's carelessness as the key to their downfall. Feeling stronger, Siesta prepares to finally begin her plan. Siesta transforms her appearance, dressing in an elegant gown. She embraces her new identity, leaving her weak, tearful past behind. She proceeds to the grand family estate. At breakfast, the father asks Elmer about her ball preparations, and she happily mentions the dress her brother bought. Elmer gushes that because her brother couldn't choose a dress, he bought her 3 instead. As her father lectures Elmer on proper behavior, the door clatters open, and Siesta confidently interrupts their breakfast. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a princess who was known for her kindness and beauty. Her heart was as pure as the driven snow, and her smile could brighten even the darkest of days. The princess was loved by all who knew her, from the humblest peasant to the mightiest king. Her father stares in disbelief, shocked by Siesta's sudden and confident appearance. The family remarks on her changed aura, and Siesta plays along nonchalantly. Elmer compliments Siesta, and Siesta playfully deflects the praise, calling her sister. As Hans stops Elmer, their father furiously confronts Siesta for appearing before them. As her father belittles her, and her brother moves to discipline her, Siesta's power activates, having predicted their actions. A blast of power sends her brother flying backwards. Trapped in a magical prison on the table, Hans listens as Siesta calmly mocks his lack of manners. Piafit, Siesta sends her brother crashing face first into his breakfast, shocking their family. While her brother cries out in humiliation, Siesta calmly observes her father's silent rage. Accused of madness by her father, Siesta calmly insists she only wants to join them for a meal. A tense silence descends upon the dining room. She notes the unprecedented fury in her father's glare, a silence she's never experienced. A group of young children are standing around a table and interacting with a globe in a classroom setting. Contrasting this meal with the scraps she ate alone, she sarcastically finds dining as a family to be lovely. Having made her point, she excuses herself from the table. As she departs, she reaffirms that this is only the beginning of her revenge. In the hallway, Elmer watches her sister walk away, with a conflicted expression. Her sister Elmer appears innocent and sweet. Elmer approaches her, and Siesta asks what she wants. To her surprise, Elmer gushes about how amazing her display of power was. Siesta listens with a look of cautious surprise. Elmer confesses that she has always wanted to be closer to her. Elmer accepts Siesta's offer of friendship, and Siesta presents her with a beautiful blue gemmed bracelet. Siesta watches her with a calm, unreadable expression. Elmer smiles, thinking the rare bracelet would suit her sister. Siesta thanks Elmer, saying she also wanted to get along, delighting the other girl. In her thoughts, Siesta vows she won't be used again, regardless of whether their bond is real or fake. The story introduces the Kingdom of Navtui, home to families with special inherited abilities. The Heitinen family, Siesta's lineage, are known as the bearers of the power of light. The silver-haired Ida represents the Erkala family, bearers of the power of sound. The red-haired Lian represents the Hakarainen family, bearers of the power of air. Back in the present, Siesta observes a butterfly that has landed on her finger. Iderkala, the Swan Prince, is praised by nobles for his grace and kindness. Siesta admits she dislikes Ida and doesn't know Lian Hakarainen yet. She takes a determined step forward. She decides she must prepare for the upcoming ball. Putting on a purple hood, she smiles with newfound resolve. Realizing she must act to change her fate, she dramatically throws off her hood. She walks through town, reflecting that she has never dared to venture out like this before. She arrives at the entrance of a dress shop. A shopkeeper's warm welcome turns to sheer horror upon recognizing the cursed daughter of the Heitinen family. Siesta stands calmly in the doorway, undeterred by the reaction. She coolly asks the trembling shopkeeper what she is doing. Stealing her resolve, she confidently demands to see the dresses. The flustered shopkeeper quickly agrees to prepare them. She presents a selection of popular dresses for Siesta to consider. Siesta studies the options, determined not to compromise on her choice. The shopkeeper offers a changing room, and Siesta accepts. Spying a beautiful butterfly hair accessory, Siesta asks to see it, earning praise for her keen eye. She examines the one-of-a-kind piece and approves. She then requests specific earrings and shoes to complete her look. The shopkeeper enthusiastically agrees to her requests. Imagining herself in stunning new outfits, Siesta resolves to erase the stigma of being the cursed child. She views the upcoming glamorous ball not as a party, but as a battlefield. With a determined gaze, she sees her new attire as the armor of a warrior. Having made her purchases, she graciously thanks the shopkeeper. Leaving the shop, she realizes she will also need a personal maid. Her expression is hidden by a bonnet as she walks down the street. She stops, shocked to see a man violently kicking a teal-haired girl. The man furiously berates the fallen girl for returning empty-handed. The girl desperately begs him not to be mad, promising to do better. He scoffs at her pleas, demanding to know who she thinks is taking care of her. The abused girl weakly calls him dad. He cruelly rejects her, and she begs him not to go. As he walks away, she cries out for her dad not to abandon her. Siesta watches the cruel scene, her face a mask of disbelief. She reflects that in this world, the weak are always oppressed and denied freedom. She thinks bitterly that for the weak, suffering is endless and storms never bring relief. A rush of emotion overtakes her. Clenching her fist, she dismisses the hope of a better world as a mere fairy tale. As the man raises his fist to strike again, Siesta intervenes, stopping his punch with her bare hand. Surrounded by a magical floral aura, she glares down at him as the teal-haired girl stares up in awe. A brutish man angrily confronts Siesta. She sees her own past self in a fallen, helpless girl with blue hair. Siesta tells the blue-haired girl to stand on her own 2 feet, leaving her stunned. As the man warns her to stay out of it, Siesta coldly tells him he's the one who needs to shut up. Siesta menacingly asks if he's heard of the Haitonen family's cursed child. Shocked, the man cries out in fear and runs away, screaming that he doesn't want to die. Siesta observes in disgust as the man abandons the girl to save himself. She turns to the blue-haired girl, asking how long she intends to stay on the ground. Siesta tells the girl she can crawl in the dirt for life if she wants. But if not, she commands her to stand up. A gentle hand reaches out to help. The blue-haired girl nervously accepts Siesta's hand. Siesta warns the surrounding crowd that this is not a freak show and asks if they want to be cursed too. Her threat sends the onlookers scattering in terror. She muses that being the cursed child is turning out to be quite useful. The blue-haired girl looks up at Siesta with awe and hope. Siesta leads her away toward a city gate. She tells the girl to live freely from now on. The blue-haired girl is left speechless by her words. As Siesta turns to leave, the blue-haired girl smiles gratefully. The girl looks down at her own simple clothes. A sudden thought crosses her mind as she clutches her arm, remembering old wounds and regular abuse. She realizes that after a life of being ordered around, she has lost her sense of autonomy. The blue-haired girl stares with a lost expression. With a jolt, she realizes she's in trouble, lost without someone to guide her. Siesta offers a new path. If she has nowhere to go, then she can live for her. Overcome with emotion, the blue-haired girl tearfully accepts the offer. With the matter settled, Siesta asks for the girl's name. As they shake hands, Siesta introduces herself, and the blue-haired girl greets her in return. They formally seal their new partnership. A handsome, blonde-haired man with blue eyes appears. The day of the ball arrives. Siesta prepares for the event, having her long purple hair brushed. The blue-haired girl, now a maid, thinks about how handy Siesta is because her father made her do everything. The new maid confesses that people find her blue hair creepy. Siesta reassures her that she thinks it's beautiful, a kindness the maid has never heard before. Having once hated her own hair, Siesta is now glad she hired the new maid. Siesta proposes they continue working well together, and the maid happily agrees. The maid notes the other servants left long ago, but Siesta says she's used to being left behind. She recalls never attending public events, even being mauled by a monster at a ball she went to in secret. In a flashback, she screams for her brother as her family betrays her. She remembers her brother's shock as she used her ability to save him. But her power wasn't enough to save herself. She vividly remembers the feeling of fangs piercing her skin as her brother used her as bait to survive. Snapped out of her memory, her maid notices she looks pale and asks if she's all right. Siesta reaffirms her goal. Since her father wants her brother to be the heir, she will get the approval of other noble families instead. To do that, her eyes glow with purpose. She decides she must first track their movements. A magical butterfly surveys the grand ball from above. As the butterfly flies through the crowd, Two men wonder why Lady Siesta is not in attendance. Two men speculate that Siesta's absence is for the best. Siesta scoffs at her family's pathetic attempts to paint her as the villain. A handsome, silver-haired man wishes he could meet Lady Siesta. The silver-haired man smiles thoughtfully to himself. At the ball, several ladies swoon over the man, calling him Lord Aid. Kia Lord Aid smiles charmingly as the women adore him. A purple-haired man questions Lord Aid's interest in Siesta. Lord Aid wonders how the once budding Siesta has bloomed. A lady in a red dress interrupts to flatter Lord Aid. The ladies compete for his attention, disparaging the cursed child. The woman in red boldly declares she is the one most suited for him. She proposes a match from a great house, suggesting Elmer. Lord Aid firmly states his disapproval of their gossip. He gently asks Lady Veronica to drop the subject, and she meekly agrees. He tells her she's more charming when she smiles, winning her over. Lady Veronica swoons, wishing she was the only one he looked at. An attendant announces the arrival of Lady Vivian. Lady Vivian makes her grand entrance, descending the staircase. A vibrant floral pattern marks the grand occasion. The entire ballroom bows to greet the star of the kingdom. Guests praise Lady Vivian as the beautiful and kind treasure of the nation. A man scans the room, wondering why someone important isn't there. Lady Vivian addresses the crowd, hinting at a major announcement. Siesta's father proudly declares that Hans will be the new family head. An enchanting swarm of glowing butterflies suddenly fills the ballroom. Guests murmur in confusion as Hans stares in shock at the magical display. Lord A senses an overwhelming power, its source revealed to be Siesta. The guests pinpoint the source of the immense magic, their eyes drawn to one spot. Siesta makes a stunning entrance, declaring herself the next head of the Heitinen family. With a confident smirk, Siesta reaffirms her claim to the title. Her family reacts with shock and fury, rejecting her declaration. With a crash, monstrous wolves with glowing eyes smash into the ballroom. Kia! The terrified guests scream and scramble to run from the beasts. Kia! Amid the chaos, a man shoves Lady Veronica to the ground. As a wolf lunges for Veronica, Lord Aid commands it to stop, unleashing his power. The monster lies slain at his feet as a shaken Veronica looks on. Lord Aid checks on Veronica, urging her to escape to safety. He stands his ground, watching as the other nobles flee. A red-haired man, Rian Hakarenen, watches Lord Aid and remarks, "Not bad." Siesta recalls being devoured by this same monster in a past life. With cold determination, she decides to test her enemy's true power. Watching the chaos unfold, Lady Vivian worries that the situation is out of control. She moves to help the guests, but is held back by her royal escort. The escort pleads for her to stay safe, then glances worriedly towards Siesta. Lord A's attention is captured by the unfolding events. Rian warns Lord Aid of a wolf sneaking up behind him. Rian unleashes a powerful gust of wind magic, striking the monster. The remaining guests marvel at the incredible power of the Hakarenen family. After his attack, Rian notices a curious, sparkling object on the floor. He kneels and picks up a shimmering purple fragment from the ground. Rian holds the glowing, purple crystal fragment. Lord Aid asks Rian if something is wrong, but he quickly dismisses it as nothing, while Siesta watches them. Having assessed her enemy's abilities, Siesta decides it's time to make her move, her eyes set on her brother. Ah, found him. She has located her brother in the crowd. Hans instructs his sister Elmer to follow him. Elmer thinks that, even if they're not related by blood, they're still family. Her father warns Elmer to stay safe, and she nervously agrees. Elmer forces a pleasant smile. The father commands a stunned Hans to stay behind and fight the monster. He tells Hans that, as the rightful heir, he can erase Siesta's claim by defeating the beast. The father silences Hans's protest, asking if he no longer wants to be the family head. The father leads Elmer to safety, abandoning Hans. The snarling wolf stalks toward a terrified Hans. Eek. He stumbles and falls backward in fear. A monstrous claw slams into the floor beside him. As the monster looms over him, Hans pleads for it to stop, while Siesta watches with a smirk. A brief focus on the detail of Siesta's elegant dress. Gotcha Hans shoves Siesta towards the monster, telling her not to blame him. Lord Aid and Rian watch in horror as Hans betrays his sister. Siesta lies motionless on a blood-splattered sigil. A faint, knowing smile plays on her lips. She remains still on the cold, decorated floor. Rian cries out a desperate warning. He lunges forward to help as the wolf attacks Siesta. Damn it, I'm surrounded. He finds himself cornered by two more wolves. Out of the way. He unleashes a powerful magical attack. No, I won't make it in time. He panics, realizing he can't save her. He stares in confusion, wondering why Siesta is smiling as she calmly places her hand on the now docile monster. The monster begins to dissolve into a beautiful swarm of white butterflies. Incredible. Rian watches in awe as Siesta is enveloped by the magical butterflies. Lord Aid marvels at her ability to both teleport and wield such incredible power. Hans angrily confronts Siesta for displaying her powers in public. He demands to know why she keeps using her forbidden abilities. Guests recognize her power as the light ability. Amazed, she turned a monster into butterflies. Hans grabs Siesta's arm, pulling her away from the crowd. Smiling triumphantly, Siesta announces this is why she's the true next head of the family. A noblewoman asks Lord Aid if he knew, but he admits he also expected Hans to be the heir. Lord Aid confronts Hans, asking why he was so secretive about Siesta's power. Believing it was a mistake to hide it, Lord Aid watches Hans frantically deny everything. Hans furiously dismisses Siesta's power as a trick, insisting the cursed child can't wield their family's abilities. Elmer echoes the sentiment, accusing Siesta of trying to steal the spotlight. Hans grabs his sister, telling her she has gone too far this time. With a condescending smirk, he tells Siesta to admit her mistake. Siesta reflects on how her unfit brother always failed, leaving her to take the blame. In her eyes, he's just a pitiful person who whines like a child. She faces her brother's accusations with calm composure. Lord Aid intervenes, telling Hans to back off and stop scaring her. Siesta and Lord Aid share a brief, knowing smile. The crowd gossips about the humiliating blow to Hans's pride. The father glares at Lord Aid, annoyed by his unnecessary interference. A young man shouts, "Let me through," as he runs forward. The red-haired Rian praises her, exclaiming, "You're amazing." He basks in the crowd's attention while Siesta shyly wonders if she was really that good. Rian hypes up the crowd, asking if everyone saw her incredible power. Two nobles comment that thanks to the great ducal families, no one was injured. Rian smiles, saying their powers are meant to protect everyone. A narration box introduces the confident young man as Rian Hakarainen. Rian excitedly tells Siesta that he's glad he came to the party and wants to talk more. Siesta politely declines for now, leaving Rian shocked. Bidding them farewell until the succession ceremony, Siesta vanishes in a swirl of magic and butterflies. Lord Aid advises a stunned Hans to get some rest, noting he doesn't look well. As Lord Aid and Hans depart, Rian watches them from the crowd. Rian smirks to himself, thinking it won't be that easy. A promotional banner is displayed. Surrounded by glowing butterflies, Siesta reappears inside a room. Her blue-haired maid welcomes her home, and Siesta acknowledges her return. She recounts to her maid how her brother caused quite a scene. The maid offers her a towel, and Siesta thanks her, saying she wanted to freshen up. Siesta smiles mischievously, anticipating another commotion is about to start. Her maid notices two men approaching and realizes they're here. The doors fly open as a furious Hans and his father demand to know if Siesta understands what she's done. Unfazed, Siesta calmly sips her tea. Hans clenches his fist in rage, screaming at her not to mock him. Peeking around a corner, Elmer recalls how furious her brother was in the carriage. She watches with concern, wondering if Siesta will be all right. Her father reminds Siesta that she is a disgrace who is forbidden from appearing in public. He angrily adds that she must never reveal her powers to anyone. Facing them, Siesta calmly replies that she remembers their orders quite clearly. An image of sharp, thorny vines appears. She recalls her past self, huddled and broken, having foolishly obeyed their ridiculous orders for so long. Siesta notes that they always paid such close attention to her appearance. She smirks, asking if they ever imagined she would defy them. Staring him down, Siesta declares it's time to accept the truth. She was the one who manifested their family's power. She tells her father it's time he realized the truth, warning him about what could happen if it comes to it. Her hand is shown amid a flash of shattering white light, her eyes glowing with power. Siesta warns that she can erase them all at any moment. A swarm of butterflies engulfs her father and brother, forcing them to shield their eyes. Siesta announces that her current room is unsuitable, and she will be moving to the top floor. She gazes at them coldly, daring them to object. A stunned Elmer watches. As Siesta walks past her, Elmer nervously watches her defeated brother and father retreat. Siesta chides them for leaving Elmer behind as they walk away. She turns and walks resolutely down the hall. The maid reports that she has finished moving Siesta's things, and Siesta remarks how quick it was with so little luggage. Just as the maid is about to leave, Siesta asks her to wait. The maid promises to keep her ears open 247, much to Siesta's exasperation. Thinking her maid might actually do it, Siesta tells her to just move into the room next door instead. The maid looks hesitant, while Siesta stands with her arms crossed, looking determined. Siesta calmly explains her next move to her maid. She tells her maid that after so much suffering, things will finally get better for her. The maid reflects that Siesta is the only one who treats her with humanity, and she's lucky to serve her. The maid urgently rushes up the stairs, calling out for her lady. Siesta asks why she's in such a hurry, and the maid hesitates with the news. She announces that Lord Rian Hakarainen has arrived. While her father and brother block his way, Siesta learns of Rian's unexpected visit. From downstairs, Rian shouts that he's here to see Siesta, not Elmer. Rian spots her at the top of the stairs and calls out his own name with a grin. He enthusiastically runs toward her, calling out her name. Rian explains he came to talk, complaining that her relatives were a pain to get past. Siesta agrees with a knowing smile, admitting she also finds them difficult. Her family schemes to prevent her succession, hoping to usurp House Hakarainen. Realizing her family's plot, Siesta thanks her maid, Jessica, and suggests to Rian they go somewhere else. He eagerly takes her hand, exclaiming, "Let's go outside." She finds herself walking with him through a bustling town, having followed him without a second thought. Rian strikes up a cheerful conversation with a surprised market vendor. The vendor's formal address flusters Rian, and Siesta recalls his dislike for such titles. Rian explains with a charming smile that formal titles make his skin crawl. While Siesta admires the prosperous territory, locals begin to whisper, identifying her as the cursed. As expected, Rian steps forward, angrily challenging anyone with a problem to take it up with him. He stands protectively in front of Siesta, shielding her from the hostile crowd. The townspeople mock him, asking if he's trying to play the knight. His expression hardens with annoyance as he touches the crest on his tie. Siesta quietly watches the tense confrontation unfold. Siesta calmly retorts that narrow-minded people who follow rumors would never understand the truth anyway. Outraged, the hecklers shout back, accusing her of thinking she's clever. Another citizen steps in, scolding them for disrespecting young Master Rian. A burly man holding a cleaver threatens the hecklers, reminding them who runs the town. The crowd angrily explains their deep loyalty to House Hakarainen, on whom their livelihoods depend. Their family is shown to have brought prosperity by developing trade and punishing outlaws. The people praise the Hakarainen family for helping everyone, unlike other nobles. Defeated, the hecklers storm off, vowing never to return. Siesta reflects that true leadership is more than just having awakened powers. Watching Ryan laugh with his people, she realizes the family's true strength is their bond with them. A brief, admiring focus on Rian's warm expression, she concludes that Rian possesses a natural charisma that moves people, a power completely different from her own. Rian tells the crowd they're worrywarts, but they insist on defending his honor. Siesta watches the warm exchange with a thoughtful expression. The townspeople now turn to Siesta, praising her sharp words and surprising her with their approval. As they offer her a gift, she realizes that here, no one calls her cursed, they accept her. Weighed down by gifts, a chibi Rian encourages a struggling Siesta to keep going. After Ryan helps carry everything, they finally sit down to rest at an outdoor table. Sighs. She pinches the bridge of her nose, feeling the day's exhaustion. From across the table, Rian watches her with a gentle gaze. He asks if her arms are okay, and she smiles, saying she knows the people meant well. She reflects that being thanked, instead of scorned, is a new feeling, and she likes it. Her attention is caught by a young child dropping a piece of fruit. The child chases the fruit into the path of runaway horses, and Siesta screams, "Look out!" Alerted by her cry, Rian turns to face the sudden danger. Rian strains against an unseen force. He throws up a magic circle, trying to stop the runaway horses from trampling the child. The horses neigh wildly, rearing up in defiance of his magic as he watches in alarm. A horse shrieks, its head thrown back in panic. Rian stands his ground, facing the oncoming danger. Watching with alarm, Siesta thinks his name with growing concern. Siesta shoves Rian aside, and their eyes lock as she grabs his hand to pull him to safety. A burst of light and butterflies emanates from her. The horse's handler is thrown back as Siesta resolves to stop the animal herself. Pushing Rian behind her, she smiles, but he steps forward again, determined to cast his spell. A swirling vortex of magic lifts the horse safely into the air. Rian rushes to the family, asking if everyone is all right. The scene darkens, filled with the silhouettes of fluttering butterflies. Surrounded by thorny roses, Siesta reflects that Rian is completely different, like a sun too dazzling for her. The air fills once more with dark, fluttering butterflies. As Rian smiles warmly at her, Siesta asks what he's thanking her for. He tells her she saved him, pointing out that she could have been hurt in the process. Siesta looks away, wondering if she was only in the way. Rian reassures her that she wasn't, adding that her actions have convinced him of something. He smiles brightly, realizing that Siesta is someone he can truly trust. He reflects that Lord Aid always seems fake, then Riley wonders if he isn't a noble himself. Rian playfully tells her she looks loveliest when she smiles, making Siesta giggle. He's pleased to see her smile, remarking that rumors about her clearly can't be trusted. Rian leans in, pointing out that though they call her cursed, he's perfectly fine after spending time with her. Siesta recalls how he unhesitatingly grabbed her hand when they left her angry family behind. Her thought lingers on the memory of him taking her hand without a second thought. She calls him strange, which flusters Rian into asking if he's at least better than Lord Aid. Ugh, a chibi, Rian recoils as Siesta stares him down. Rian looks away, admitting it feels like Lord Aid is hostile toward him. He feels there's an unbreachable wall between them, remembering Lord Aiden in a distant crowd. He holds a glowing, purple magic crystal, his thoughts turning serious. Siesta looks on in surprise as Rian clenches his fist. In a vision of a destroyed room, he concludes that monsters were sealed in the crystal and released at the event. The question hangs in the air. It wasn't an accident, but a deliberate attack. Rian confirms it was intentional while observing the townspeople. Siesta agrees they must investigate, as it is their duty as one of the 3 great ducal families. A title card reintroduces Rian Hakkarainen. Siesta surprises Rian by asking to hold on to the magic crystal. She explains she has a suspect in mind and needs the crystal as evidence. In a cosmic void, Siesta recalls knowing the culprit from her 3rd loop, having seen them before saving her brother. Her gaze is sharp with cold certainty. Rian reluctantly hands over the crystal, urging her to be careful and contact him if anything happens. She smiles, telling him he worries too much, but thanks him sincerely. Oh, right, Rian exclaims, remembering he came to give her something he wrote. He dashes past a watching Siesta, a scroll in hand. He presents her with an official approval letter, which she needs to become head of her house. I'm on your side, he declares, telling her not to lose. Clutching the letter, Siesta vows not to waste his approval. Siesta resolves that while she wanted to avoid him, she can no longer afford to do so. From afar, a figure watches her home, wondering if Rian has given his approval. In his office, a silver-haired man remarks that this development was expected. He recalls that although he manifested powers first, another's were far more outstanding. Clutching his collar, his expression darkens with envy as he wonders why it wasn't him. He examines a letter with a pensive expression. Reading the letter, he notes that person is placing their hopes on her. He smirks, concluding he must carefully decide whether to support her as the next head of house. The scene transitions, focusing on the opulent interior of a room. Now at home, Siesta relaxes on a sofa, reading a letter herself. She thinks about the silver-haired man, noting his close relationship with her father and brother. Realizing he will be a difficult opponent, her expression becomes serious. As her maid, Jessica, delivers a letter, Siesta notes with a smile that her rival has made the first move. Her annoyed father and worried sister, Elmer, approach her. Her father demands to know what she said. Siesta coolly reminds him that he adopted Elmer because he saw her as a cursed, worthless child. She rebukes him for trying to pawn her off, telling him to stop tarnishing the family's reputation. Elmer timidly asks if Siesta will attend the Urkula family's tea party, and Siesta confirms she will. Her father insists she take Elmer, but Siesta counters that she was the one who received the invitation. When he questions her ability to handle high society, she retorts that he's the one who kept her locked away. Siesta reflects that while Elmer claims to want friendship, she's always just gauging their father's mood. Seeing through their act, she asks if they just want her to invite Elmer along. Beaming, Elmer thanks her sister enthusiastically. Jessica watches the exchange with a neutral expression from the side. While walking down a hall, Jessica briefs Siesta on her plan to infiltrate the Urkula estate as a maid during the garden party. Siesta smiles, pleased with how quickly their plan is moving forward. Siesta explains that she'll release butterflies as a signal if trouble arises, and Jessica urges her to be careful. With a butterfly fluttering nearby, Siesta resolves that this time, she will be the one in control. The Grand Urkula estate comes into view, the venue for the party. Siesta arrives with Elmer, and 2 guests immediately recognize them as the ladies of the Hentonen family. A woman in red scoffs that it must be nice to get attention just for having a famous name. Siesta turns to the woman with a cold look, asking if she was addressing her. With a cutting smile, she feigns ignorance, asking the bold-faced woman for her name. The flustered woman sputters in outrage, while Siesta calmly dubs her Miss I Have No Name. As the woman seethes about the cursed child's nerve, Elmer whispers that her sister was amazing. The woman in red turns her scorn on Elmer, declaring that she has no place there without proper origins. Other guests begin to whisper cruel rumors about Elmer's background. Elmer looks heartbroken as she's surrounded by the mocking gossips. Siesta steps in, sarcastically asking if Miss No Name is royalty, since she'd have to be to look down on one of the great ducal families. She calmly continues her verbal takedown. She looks the woman dead in the eye, demanding she properly state her name. Defeated, the woman in red retreats, muttering a vague threat. The crowd of onlookers is impressed, praising Siesta for silencing Lady Veronica and proving she is fit to be the next family head. Elmer looks on with admiration, hoping her sister will indeed become the head of the family. Siesta's attention is suddenly drawn to something in the distance. Her gaze locks onto a lone figure, watching from an upper-story window of the mansion. Meeting up with Jessica, she quietly confirms that her maid will handle the rest of their plan. The beautiful garden pavilion, the main site of the tea party, is shown. The silver-haired man, Lord Aid, strolls through the garden with a knowing look. He thinks to himself that catching the intruding maid would be far too easy and boring. Watching Siesta, he decides to wait and see what she is truly capable of. Unaware she's being watched, Siesta confidently converses with other guests. Siesta smiles politely, bidding farewell until their next meeting. A man thanks Lady Siesta for attending and asks if she's enjoying herself. The silver-haired Lord Eid gives her a knowing smile as she thinks his name. Siesta playfully tells Lord Eid that she still has a chance to become the next family head. Lord Eid inwardly admits he was trying to build some rapport with her. He coolly reminds her that he will be the one to decide in the end. Siesta realizes that without his approval, she can't become head, and he is waiting to see her next move. She watches him walk away with a determined gaze. She continues, explaining she is here because the head of House Ercola invited her. Concluding it would be a waste not to seize the opportunity, she thanks him for his support. With a confident smile, Siesta calls him the Swan Prince. As she passes him, she thinks that her very existence is a greater threat than his personal issues. The woman in red rushes toward Lord Aida, warning him to stay away from Siesta. Siesta recognizes her as Lady Veronica. With a wicked smile, Veronica publicly accuses Siesta of sneaking into Lord Eid's room and stealing a brooch. The other guests gasp and whisper among themselves at the shocking accusation. Lord Eid calmly tells everyone to calm down and avoid making a fuss. Veronica insists he shouldn't side with Siesta, blaming his kindness for giving her the wrong idea. She rails against the cursed child's presumptuousness as Siesta watches impassively. Elmer worries as she overhears guests calling both her and Siesta disgraceful. She gasps, startled by the turn of events while Siesta remains composed. Veronica smirks, claiming that insulting others must be what Siesta lives for. Grabbing Siesta, Veronica declares that her silence proves her guilt and that the Henton sisters don't belong there. Jessica, Siesta's maid, calmly observes the scene from the crowd. Siesta makes eye contact with Jessica, who is standing among the guests. Lord Hyde turns to Siesta, asking if Veronica's accusation is true. Siesta calmly suggests they should investigate the claim. Much to Veronica's shock, Veronica points to a carriage, claiming Siesta hid the stolen brooch inside. Lord Aid agrees that they shouldn't leave the matter unresolved. He and Siesta walk toward the ornate Hentonen family carriage. Lord Aid steps into the carriage to begin the search. Siesta watches with a neutral expression as the crowd follows intently. Inside the carriage, Lord Aid searches under the seats. He steps out, announcing that he checked everywhere but found nothing. In disbelief, Veronica storms into the carriage, insisting the brooch was under the seat. She frantically searches, realizing in horror that the brooch is gone. Lord Eid questions if her belongings were actually stolen in the first place. The scene transitions to a wide shot of the grand Ercola estate. Lord Eid announces he'll check his room and asks them to wait. In his hand is a beautiful brooch, which he confirms was in his bedroom, though it had been moved. He explains that since the brooch is custom-made and unworn, no one at the party should have seen it. He turns to face Veronica, implying that her knowledge of the item is suspicious. Lord Eid directly accuses Veronica of being the one who entered his room. Veronica is struck speechless by his accusation. She stammers that she only wanted to teach an out-of-place girl a lesson. Siesta coolly addresses the disgraced Veronica as Miss High and Mighty. Veronica clenches her fists, seething with humiliation and anger. Lord Eid gently takes Veronica's hand, his expression unreadable. He informs a horrified Veronica that he will be reconsidering their relationship. Two women gossip, telling a woman in a red dress to stop playing the victim. As the woman in the red dress storms off, other guests watch her departure. Siesta calmly instructs the orange-haired girl to head to the carriage first. Her attention is caught as a voice calls out, "Lady Siesta," and she turns to see Ide approaching. Ide apologizes for the terrible experience she had, taking responsibility as her host. Siesta dismisses his apology, saying she's used to it and he should apologize to Elmer instead. Ide watches the teal-haired maid leave and asks Siesta if that was her doing as well. Siesta smiles, admitting she anticipated that someone might try to sneak around. Closing her eyes with a pleased smile, she says she is honored by his praise. Ide covers his mouth, looking flustered as Siesta stands before him, amid falling petals. Composing himself, Ide extends a gloved hand, expressing his wish to build a good relationship. His hand reaches for hers against a backdrop of magical white roses. Startled, Siesta watches as he takes her hand. He gently holds her hand, a soft smile on his face as she looks down. Looking up in surprise, she calls out to him as he leans in closer. He pulls her into his arms, asking her to make the butterflies she released disappear. Ide reveals he knows she used the butterflies to outwit Lady Veronica and asks if he's right. Siesta lets out an exasperated sigh. With a flash, the butterflies vanish, and Siesta declares that they are now all gone. Ide remarks that the Hentonen family's abilities are quite unusual and she can't afford to be careless. A disembodied hand holds a glowing crystal, with a voice saying it's too late for him to realize the truth now. Ide recognizes the object as a fragment of a magic crystal. Siesta tells him not to play dumb, revealing she knows he scattered crystals that seal monsters. Ide admits that he had known about the plot for some time. A memory of vicious gray wolves appears, as narration explains he planned to find the real culprit to avoid being framed. A flashback reveals a blonde woman scattering the crystals. Siesta mockingly refers to him as the self-nominated noble prince loved by all. Looking at him on a bridge, she admits she never imagined he had such a side to him. Ide explains he first suspected she was aiming for Lady Vivienne, but the placement of the crystals didn't make sense. Holding her close, he compliments her, saying she would have staged things more effectively if she were truly the culprit. Siesta correctly deduces his true target was someone close to His Majesty, shocking Ide. A memory of Leanne fighting a wolf surfaces as Ide recalls Siesta's strange awareness of Leanne's early power. As Ide glares menacingly, Siesta calmly tells him not to make such a scary face, assuring him she won't slander him. She proposes a deal, offering her silence in exchange for his letter of approval as head of the Ercole family. They face each other, and he confirms her request for his consent. Ide outlines their arrangement. He keeps his pristine image, and she gets the approval she needs. Siesta advocates for mutual support, while Ide's inner thoughts mark her as a potential obstacle. Ide's thoughts reveal that refusing her terms means being abandoned by someone important to him. He agrees to her terms, admitting she's far more clever than he initially realized. With a smirk, Siesta tells him not to call her personality bad, as they settled things peacefully. She playfully touches his chest, promising to bring the letter of approval as he smiles. The scene transitions to a grand, sunlit mansion. Ide's gloved hand presents a formal document, asking if it is sufficient. Siesta takes the letter from him, saying she will check it. After reviewing it, she confirms their negotiation is settled and promises to keep his secret. Ide grabs her chin, warning her he is only overlooking her actions because there were no casualties. He leans in close, admitting he's holding back from punishing her, and she coolly agrees to keep his warning in mind. Calling her decision wise, Ide watches as she turns and walks away with her maid. He watches her departure with a cold, calculating gaze. A purple-haired man approaches from behind, calling Ide's name and asking if Siesta was just there. Lord Ide tells a purple-haired man that approving things rashly is for fools. He smirks, revealing that he initially thought he shouldn't approve her, siding with his friend. The purple-haired man reacts in shock, questioning his use of the past tense. He realizes Ide approved her anyway, unable to show favoritism after seeing her potential. The purple-haired man screams in agony, questioning why he wasn't chosen to be the family head. Consumed by fear and jealousy, he clutches his collar as Lord Ide watches his negative emotions. Ide warns that these feelings will attract the beasts of his family, lamenting their lost future as fellow heads of house. The purple-haired man collapses in despair, frantically claiming all status, honor, and money as his own. Lord Ide places a hand on his shoulder, urging him to act before everything is taken from him. He leans in close, encouraging the man to act, and the man weakly agrees. With a crazed grin, the purple-haired man vows he will no longer tolerate her mockery. He seethes with resentment, believing the headship would be his if not for her, and resolves to correct the situation. The scene darkens, filled with the ominous image of thorny roses. A new day begins as Siesta walks gracefully through a grand estate. She stands serenely, flanked by her maids in a luxurious hall. A cascade of invitations appears as she notes the growing flattery she's receiving from the nobility. Walking along an outdoor corridor, she feels she is getting closer to her goal. Suddenly, a statue topples from above as a voice urgently yells for her to watch out. Thud! A blonde man with fangs pulls her out of harm's way just in time. Holding her safely, the blonde man asks Lady Siesta if she is hurt. He points upwards, explaining that someone intentionally dropped a statue, aiming for her. Siesta looks up in shock, thinking about what would have happened if it had hit her directly. The blonde man looks at her with deep concern. Siesta explains that she had been patrolling the area for this very reason. He examines the broken statue, admitting he hadn't expected an attack like this. The blonde man grimly states that a brother trying to kill his own sister is something that should never happen. Siesta quietly agrees, admitting that her family is far from normal. He apologizes, wishing he had noticed the signs of danger sooner to spare her pain. Surprised, Siesta questions his choice of words, noting that Sir Nicholas did, in fact, save her. Sir Nicholas admits he was too self-absorbed before, but now swears he will protect her. A brief flashback shows a younger Nicholas and Siesta together in a garden. Back in the present, Siesta looks at him, taken aback by his sudden vow. Sir Nicholas looks at her with unwavering determination. Siesta smiles, thanking him for his genuine concern. She turns to leave, stating she won't run away, but he calls out to her. As he tries to protest, she looks back confidently, declaring that these futile struggles are almost over. Bidding him farewell, she walks away, leaving him to watch her go. Sir Nicholas is left standing alone, his expression thoughtful. Inside, Siesta comes face to face with her furious, purple-haired brother. In her room, Jessica hugs Siesta from behind, announcing that the day has finally arrived. Dressed in an elegant black gown, Siesta smiles with radiant confidence. She warmly thanks her maid for the support that has brought her to this moment. Siesta's determined gaze is contrasted by the resentful glares of her father and brother in the background. An empress on her throne is informed that the representatives of the three great ducal houses have arrived. Lord Aid and a new, red-haired young man are introduced as two of the representatives. Siesta stands ready, her expression composed and resolute amidst a backdrop of white roses. The red-haired man, Siesta, and Lord Aid walk together as the three ducal representatives. As she proceeds, her eyes meet Sir Nicholas's in the crowd. Siesta offers him a subtle, respectful nod of acknowledgement. Lord Aid offers a gentle, encouraging smile. On her throne, a blonde noblewoman announces the start of the succession ceremony. Siesta and her purple-haired father share a tense, silent gaze. Together, they stand before the throne to begin the proceedings. The noblewoman looks forward to seeing what Arius will do to earn recognition. Siesta and her father stand side by side, their expressions grim. Her father claims he only kept her hidden out of overprotectiveness. Siesta is shocked as he insists his initial opposition was just a father's love. Lord Aid watches from the side as her father claims to respect her wishes now. The red-haired man scoffs internally, remembering how the father viciously badmouthed Siesta. The father compares a female family head to his late mother, standing in the line of fire. He smiles disingenuously, claiming his views have changed after seeing her up close. Lady Vivian listens thoughtfully, while Siesta remains wary of her father's act. The father formally requests permission from Lady Vivian to pass the family heirloom to Siesta. With a smile, Lady Vivian grants permission and declares Siesta the rightful successor. The father smirks behind Siesta, his true intentions hidden. He presents a golden bracelet, but Siesta recognizes it as something else entirely. A painful memory surfaces of a younger Siesta wearing the bracelet, kept from her family. She understands. The bracelet seals her special ability, and this is all a trap as her father calls her forward. As he tries to force the bracelet on her, she resists, saying no, while he questions her refusal. He holds her wrist, pushing the cursed heirloom closer. With a cry to stop, Siesta unleashes a golden power, repelling the bracelet. The crowd gasps at the display, and her father hides a sinister smile. Her father feigns despair, crying out that Siesta has rejected the headship herself as she tries to deny it. He points an accusing finger, declaring her refusal is witnessed by all. Guests begin to whisper amongst themselves, confirming she did say no. Lord A and Siesta exchange a worried glance amidst the turmoil. She turns toward Lord Aid, a flicker of uncertainty on her face. Standing close, Siesta thinks that her father's plan is unfolding exactly as he wanted. A sudden clap cuts through the murmuring crowd, drawing all eyes. Lady Vivian calls for silence, bringing the chaos to a halt. She calls Siesta's name, who responds with a nervous, "Why, yes." Siesta confirms she wants to be head, but explains she refuses to touch that specific bracelet. Lady Vivienne asks what she dislikes about it, as a vision shows a hand grasping a dark, chained version of the bracelet. Siesta explains she sensed a sinister power from it that she cannot accept. Siesta flinches away from her father's condescending touch. He publicly denounces her as a cursed liar, but she denies his accusations. The red-haired man clenches his fist in anger as the crowd gossips. As her father tries to drag her away, a firm step stops him. The red-haired man appears, calling the father the crazy one for his lies. He defends Siesta, asking what harm she has ever caused, despite the accusations. In the audience, Lord Ede and her brother watch the scene unfold, her brother looking stunned. The red-haired man addresses Lady Vivienne, stating he approved Siesta based on her character. He vows to take full responsibility if his judgment proves wrong. Lady Vivienne smiles, acknowledging that Rianne's conviction is unshakable. Lord Ede watches the proceedings with a quiet, unreadable expression. Her brother whispers to Lord Ede that this seems to be the end for their father, Hans. Lord Ede joins Rianne, kneeling before the throne to also declare his support for Siesta. Lady Vivienne smiles warmly, her decision seemingly made. Lady Vivienne tells Siesta that she had a premonition the first time they met. She explains she foresaw their deep connection, a premonition that has now come true. Turning to Siesta's father, Arius, Lady Vivienne thanks him for his service and tells him to rest. Arius is horrified, frantically asking if she is abandoning him. Siesta watches impassively as her father echoes his question in disbelief. Siesta flinches as her father suddenly grabs her arm in desperation. She firmly tells Lord Arius to let go of her. As Arius yells at her, a gloved hand suddenly intercepts his, stopping him. Lord Ede's hand firmly grips Arius' wrist. Lord Ede glares with cold fury, asking Arius if he was listening. He forcefully slaps Arius, who reels back in shock. Lady Vivienne addresses the assembly, giving a final call for objections to Siesta's succession. An orange-haired young woman in the crowd smiles brightly. With the hall silent, Lady Vivienne summons Siesta to the throne. Holding her staff of office, Lady Vivienne begins the official declaration. In the name of Vivienne Bloodfield, she pronounces Siesta Hentonen the new head. Siesta quietly accepts her new title. Kneeling respectfully, Siesta humbly accepts the duty bestowed upon her. Lady Vivienne gives her a warm, approving smile. The orange-haired woman claps happily in the crowd. Lord Ede congratulates Siesta, who thanks Rianne, but he credits Lady Vivienne's support. Lady Vivienne smiles as the group celebrates Siesta's successful appointment. Lord Ede informs Hans, Siesta's brother, that he will now serve as her aide. Hans stares in utter disbelief, stammering Lord Ede's name. A dark void appears, offering a choice to avoid ending as a loser. Lord Ede whispers ominously to Hans, who weakly agrees that he knows what to do. The scene transitions to the grand estate on a bright new day. Siesta discusses plans with her maid Jessica as an orange-haired girl peeks around the door. The orange-haired girl watches them with a nervous expression. Hans claims he only acted harshly towards Siesta to stay in their father's favor, and always wanted to be closer. His sister lights up with joy, asking if he truly means it. He feigns sadness, believing Siesta would never believe his change of heart. His sister looks at him with hopeful encouragement. She suggests he can express his true feelings during a celebration for Siesta. Hans declines, saying he doesn't want to make Siesta uncomfortable, hiding a gift behind his back. He presents a tin of tea, explaining it's Siesta's favorite, and asks his sister to give it to her. Delighted, she accepts the gift and promises to prepare it immediately. He waves as she happily runs off to complete the task. Back in her study, Siesta instructs her maid, Jessica, to pick up a dress she ordered. Siesta calmly reviews her documents, focused on her new duties. The orange-haired sister pushes a serving cart into the room. She beams, presenting a delicious-looking cake for her sister. A lavish tea spread of cake, sweets, and tea is presented. The sister approaches Siesta, who is still absorbed in her paperwork. The sister offers her the tea, and a preoccupied Siesta accepts with a simple thank you. Her sister's face lights up with pure joy at Siesta's acceptance. Crash! The teacup suddenly shatters as it nears Siesta's lips. Her sister calls out in alarm as Siesta clutches her face in sudden pain. Then Siesta collapses onto the couch as her terrified sister screams her name. The orange-haired sister cries out, begging Siesta to hang on. She turns hopefully, calling for her brother who just arrived. With 2 guards, Hans smirks as his sister explains something is wrong. He gloats that the paralysis drug worked as expected. Thump! He stomps on Siesta's head as his horrified sister tells him to stop. He threatens his sister, Elmel, with being sent back to the orphanage. He coolly instructs her to keep smiling and treating Siesta badly. Silenced by his threat, Elmel looks down in defeat. Hans callously covers the unconscious Siesta with a blanket. He and a guard carry her away like a parcel. Elmel lowers her head, a grim and determined look on her face. Thinking she'd finally found a family, she picks up a fallen bracelet. A memory flashes of the beautiful bracelet presented in a box. She sadly recalls hoping she had found a real home. Clutching the bracelet, she resolves to save her sister and not run away. The scene shifts to a dark, rainy path leading into a cave. Siesta awakens in chains, realizing her brother cleverly used an innocent Elmel. She worries about Elmel's guilt and hopes her maid, Jessica, will figure things out. As she struggles, a lantern appears, and Elmel calls her name. Stunned, Siesta asks why she's here. Elmel explains she snuck onto the wagon. Siesta urges her to leave, but Elmel refuses, holding a sharp rock. Elmel tearfully confesses it's her fault for blindly believing her brother. Vowing to save her, Elmel's resolve impresses Siesta. Siesta asks Elmel to break the bracelet with the stone, and she agrees. As Elmel hesitates, Siesta tells her to just go for it, even if she hits her hand. With renewed determination, Elmel raises the rock high. A hooded Hans appears behind her, asking what she is doing. He calls Elmel a bad girl for breaking the rules. Siesta screams for Elmel to run as Hans grabs her. Hans coldly reminds Elmel she was once an obedient doll and should stay that way. Elmel feels hopeless, believing she can't win and could still turn back. She thinks of how she once admired her sister. Siesta screams in anguish and frustration. Elmel cries, feeling the situation is impossible, while Siesta despises tears. Siesta challenges her to remain in her birdcage if she wishes. I don't see you as a doll, Siesta's thoughts continue. She declares loudly that Elmel is her little sister, Elmel Hentinen. Hans warns Elmel not to listen, claiming Siesta will only bring trouble. Elmel agrees with her brother, and Hans smirks, thinking he's won. Chomp. Suddenly, Elmel bites down hard on her brother's hand. As he recoils in pain, she drops to the ground, losing the rock. She grabs the rock again, telling him to wait as he lunges for Siesta. Elmel raises the stone, ready to strike. Hans looks down on her with a condescending smile. I'm not just a cute little doll, she yells, smashing the cursed bracelet. A butterfly-shaped light glows in Siesta's powerful eye. A swarm of glowing butterflies erupts as Hans realizes things have gone wrong. Suddenly, Lord Eid appears and calmly stops Hans. Move, he commands, placing Hans under arrest for attempted murder. Lord Eid reveals he knew about the previous murder attempt and set a trap to catch Hans in the act. The captured men look downcast as their defeat is announced. Lord Eid restrains Hans, promising him the punishment he deserves. On the ground, Hans frantically denies his actions and begs his family for help. As Lord Eid tries to lead her away, Siesta stops, telling a grateful Elmel that she was the one who saved her. Elmel tearfully accepts responsibility, but Siesta praises her bravery in standing up for herself. Siesta fondly tells Elmel how a sister should be, just as her maid, Jessica, arrives. Siesta asks Jessica to care for a mud-covered Elmel, who insists she is fine. As Jessica guides a blushing Elmel away, Siesta watches with a calm smile. Lord Hyde informs Siesta that Hans has been transferred and is no longer a threat. Siesta sincerely thanks him for his continued support since the beginning. Lord Eid appears flustered by her praise, until Siesta notices his injured red wrist. He dismisses her concern, gently taking her hand and admitting he wanted to save her immediately. He explains they needed a solid case, as previous evidence wasn't enough to prove attempted murder. With new testimony and evidence, he assures her Hans will never threaten her again. Siesta calls him a true knight, but he bashfully insists he isn't speaking as one. Leaning closer, he asks if she truly doesn't remember him, leaving her confused. She quietly wonders, realizing she hasn't spoken to him much in this lifetime. He promises to report to Lady Vivienne and protect her, allowing her to fulfill her duties without worry. Siesta reflects that her brother acted differently this time, unlike his past self who hid behind their father. She suddenly realizes the cursed bracelet is missing and wonders who took it. The scene transitions to a bustling city street. A newspaper headline reveals Hans Hentinen's plot to murder his sister. With his motive revealed as jealousy, Hans is paraded through the streets in a cage. Onlookers watch the disgraced man with contempt. Hans furiously proclaims his noble blood, screaming that he is different from the commoners. Now free, she reflects on her past of torture and death, finally reaching this point. In the present, Hans screams vows of revenge against those who mocked him. Their aged father, Arius, watches his son's downfall from the shadows. The scene shifts to the front of a grand, peaceful estate. Inside, Jessica delivers a letter to Siesta from Lady Vivienne. Siesta's eyes widen in surprise as she reads its contents. She recalls Hans being brought before Lady Vivienne's throne for judgment. A terrified Hans is shown with a coarse rope around his neck. Lady Vivienne's letter offers to arrange a visit for Siesta to see her brother. Siesta marvels at Lady Vivienne's consideration, despite the family shame. Getting up, she heads out, and Jessica asks where she is going. Siesta gives a knowing smile as she steps into a bright light, simply saying, "Just around." Hans looks up from his prison cell as the sound of an opening gate echoes. Siesta appears before him in a haze of light, and he asks how everyone is. She informs him of their father's disappearance, then asks if Eid mentioned anything. He desperately reaches for her through the bars of his cell. She asks him to cooperate, referencing a mysterious beloved brother and her past lives of dying for him. Admitting she loved her family, she declares it's too late, and she will imprison their other brother too. As she pulls away, he cries out, begging her not to abandon him. She reveals their other brother deemed him unworthy of saving, crushing his last hope. No! Hans screams in despair as Siesta leaves, watched by a silent Lord Ade. Siesta smiles confidently, knowing her brother's struggles are now useless. Lord Ade notes Siesta's newfound resolve, understanding that some things are unforgivable. Sometime later, Lord Ade formally addresses Lady Siesta in a sunlit courtyard. Siesta shyly addresses the man before her as Lord Nicholas. Lord Nicholas smiles, asking if they can speak for a moment. Inside, as someone calls her name, Siesta recognizes Lord Nicholas. Lord Nicholas gives a warm smile, agreeing to her unspoken request. As they stroll through the woods, he begins with a sudden apology. His apology catches Siesta off guard, and she looks at him quizzically. Confused, she notes his behavior is completely different from before. She asks him to explain what he means by his strange words. He curiously asks how her situation relates to Lord Nicholas, while she muses about the oppression she likely faced due to her abilities. Siesta grabs his hand, dismissing his optimistic view on family bonds and questioning why their father, Lord Arius, also disappeared. She pulls away, reminding him she doesn't even have the proper Hentonen hair color. Recalling being chained and isolated, she scoffs at the idea that family guarantees understanding. Looking regretful, he apologizes for speaking without knowing her circumstances. She coldly tells him it doesn't matter, as she never expected him to understand. Turning away, she excuses herself as her hair flows with an unusual energy. He watches her leave, stunned into silence and questioning his own actions. The scene shifts to Hans, who smirks confidently from his prison cell. A white-haired man appears, disappointing Hans, who is expecting Siesta. Hans desperately calls out to Ada, who calmly notes that he seems to be well. Enraged, Hans demands to know who is responsible for his imprisonment, but Ide coolly deflects the blame. Ide grabs Hans, rebuking him for his reckless actions against a lady favored by Lady Vivienne. He looks down on Hans with disdain, calling him an embarrassment to the great noble families. As Hans loses all hope, Ida cruelly confirms he can no longer live his old life. Ide offers him a way to avoid being a living shame. He presents a gleaming pistol to a horrified Hans. The scene lingers on the empty, desolate prison cell. Sitting alone with the gun, Hans laments that things would be different if he had manifested an ability. He screams in anguish, wishing he had been the one with the light ability. A glint of determination appears in his eyes as he smirks. Suddenly, a glowing orb of golden light materializes, shocking him. He reaches out, realizing the strange new power is reacting to him. As two orbs float above his hand, he realizes it's the true light ability. With newfound power, he declares Siesta a fake, and himself the rightful head of the family. As he proclaims himself the true heir, a gunshot rings out, and he collapses, bleeding. A cloaked figure states they don't need two family heads as Hans chokes on the ground. The unseen killer declares that Siesta must be the head of the Hentonen family. A horrified eye watches as blood splatters violently. A blonde woman, blood on her face, holds the gun, wishing she hadn't been forced to go to such trouble. Back at the estate, Jessica runs frantically towards Siesta and Elmel. The distraught maid tearfully struggles to mention Lord Hans. She delivers the shocking news: Hans has committed suicide. Elmel collapses in disbelief, remembering her brother's kinder side. Siesta finds it impossible to believe her cruel brother would be driven to suicide by guilt. In a dark prison, a brilliant portal of light and butterflies materializes. A black-haired prisoner recoils in shock, calling the intruder a witch. Siesta emerges from the light, asking the prisoner about Hans Hentinen's whereabouts. The prisoner confirms Hans was the man who reportedly committed suicide with a gun. He recounts hearing gunshots before a body was carried out from the back of the prison hall. Siesta understands, recalling that the prison was strangely empty of other criminals during her visit. She stands silently in the empty prison corridor with a nervous guard. Siesta considers the suspicious nature of her brother's funeral, questioning if the body was secretly buried. Walking away, she wonders how Hans could have possibly gotten a gun in his cell. Her expression hardens with suspicion, convinced there is more to the story. Gripping the cell bars, she feels cheated, as if someone snatched away her prey. As Lord Nicholas calls her name, he and a grieving Lady Vivian arrive with flowers. Lady Vivian explains she has come to offer flowers for Hans, admitting her own feelings are conflicted. She quietly calls Nicholas's name, leaning on him for a moment. Laying down the bouquet, Lady Vivian offers a prayer for Hans to rest in peace. She turns to Siesta, saying she understands the sadness of losing a family member all too well. Lady Vivian offers Siesta a look of knowing empathy. Taking her hands, Lady Vivian warmly declares that she is on Siesta's side. Siesta, moved by the gesture, offers her sincere thanks. Lord Nicholas watches the two women, a thoughtful expression on his face. Siesta recalls his naive optimism about family, a stark contrast to her own harsh reality. Noticing the tension, Lady Vivian asks if something happened, but both quickly deny it. Leaning closer, Lady Vivian quietly assures Siesta that everything is fine. Lady Vivian says she must leave and orders Nicholas to stay with Siesta, dismissing his protests that he is her personal guard by reminding him that other knights are present, then encourages Siesta to confide in him. With her instructions delivered, Lady Vivian turns and walks away. She smirks to herself, noting that Siesta, the new family head, is now connected to a devil. An uncomfortable silence hangs in the air between Siesta and Lord Nicholas. As Siesta sits, a butterfly-themed magic circle glows beneath her, telling Nicholas to return to his duties, but he refuses, bound by Lady Vivian's order. He takes her hand firmly as she reflects on her grim reality, her father missing and her brother gone. She realizes the heavy burden of the Hentinen family's future now rests upon her alone. As she thinks of being alone, dark, thorny energy swirls around her, shocking Nicholas. He cries out her name as she covers her face, overwhelmed by a wave of psychic pain. Suddenly lost in a memory, she screams and runs, convinced she must flee or be killed again. She cries out as she trips and crashes hard onto the stone floor. Lying on the ground, her eyes are wide with the paralyzing fear of a past life. The panicked vision transports her to the altar of a grand, empty chapel. The vision fades, and she finds herself exhausted, having collapsed into Nicholas's arms. He looks down at her with deep concern, deciding he must get a doctor immediately. Awakening in terror, Siesta sobs and begs for her life, pleading not to be killed. He kneels before her, his expression filled with a sudden, profound determination. In a flash, he finds himself transported to a surreal realm of purple light and glowing butterflies, wondering where he is. Through the haze, he sees a vision of Siesta standing peacefully with her other brother. He stumbles back in horror, watching her lifeless body collapse in her brother's arms. Another memory surfaces, their father scolding Hans, telling him not to do anything foolish again. But in the vision, her other brother smirks, thinking to himself that Siesta's sacrifice will not be in vain. Nicholas realizes with dawning horror that the brother framed Siesta for his own crimes. His mind is flooded with another one of her horrific deaths, as a monstrous wolf tears her apart. He relives the visceral horror of her blood staining his hands as he failed to save her. The brother's insane laughter echoes in his mind as he gleefully states how good it was that she died for him. He then sees her trapped behind a barred door, screaming for him to stop, as she is consumed by fire. The vision shifts, showing the evil brother whispering to and manipulating a younger Hans. He witnesses her scream in agony as she is impaled by countless magical spikes. Overwhelmed by her lifetimes of suffering, he clutches his head and remembers a long-forgotten promise. The memory is of them as children, a young, blonde-haired boy and a younger Siesta. Together in a sunlit garden, they had made a pinky promise. In the memory, the young boy vows that this time he wanted to protect her. Back in the present, Nicholas collapses in agony, thinking he could finally fulfill that promise now. Consumed by the vision's horror, he realizes he never knew the true extent of her suffering. Returning to reality, he gazes at the weakened Siesta with newfound understanding. He embraces her gently, vowing that he won't let anyone kill her again. His expression hardens with resolve as he declares it's time to fulfill his promise. Ha! He snaps back to full awareness, finding Siesta looking at him curiously. She watches him with a weary and questioning gaze. She turns to leave, but he calls out for her to wait. Siesta dismisses him, saying she doesn't want to lecture, but he insists that's not his intention. He grabs her shoulder, his voice filled with rage as he vows not to forgive those who killed her so many times. She looks up at him, startled by the intensity of his promise. Gripping his sword, he's haunted by the memory of her shedding blood over and over. Reflected in his blade, he swears an oath to eliminate all of her enemies. He gently tells her to live freely as she pleases, surprising her with his earnest plea. His mind made up, Lord Nicholas strides purposefully down the hall. He walks with grim determination, his thoughts fixed on protecting Siesta. He resolves that he can't let her die again, noting that Lady Vivian's concern might be useful. As he decides to request assignment as her guard, he spots a cloaked figure ahead. He stops in his tracks, horrified to see Lady Vivian admiring a familiar gold bracelet. A dark memory reveals the bracelet was given by Lord Arius to suppress Siesta's powers. Nicholas recalls that the bracelet, a tool of suppression, supposedly went missing after her kidnapping. His eyes narrow as he realizes with dawning fury that he must tell Siesta who has it. The memory of his vow to eliminate her enemies flashes through his mind. Elsewhere, Siesta rests wearily on a sofa, lamenting that she has been betrayed so many times. She listlessly touches a stack of documents on the table before her. In another memory, Nicholas asks a younger Siesta if she's hurt, relieved when she says she's fine. In a tense flashback, Nicholas demands Lord Arius release his painful grip on Siesta's arm. The scene shifts as Elmel rushes in, excitedly announcing a letter has arrived from their father. Siesta eyes the letter suspiciously, thinking any message from him now can only be bad news. She reluctantly opens the letter, which begins with a simple greeting. Reading over her shoulder, Elmel sees their father's apology for his actions at the succession ceremony. The letter claims his cruelty was a test of her resolve, not a sign of hatred. As Elmel points out a map, Siesta suspects he is luring her into another trap. Deciding to face him, she tells a concerned Elmel to stay behind. Bay Elmel springs to her feet, insisting she is going with her. With a hand over her heart, Elmel stands her ground, determined to accompany her sister. Siesta looks over at Elmel's unwavering expression. With a resigned sigh, Siesta relents as Elmel looks on anxiously. Elmel beams, delighted that she can go and support her sister. Siesta activates her magic, preparing to teleport them both. Surrounded by magical butterflies, the two sisters depart for the meeting place. They arrive at a derelict building, with Siesta commenting on how rundown it is. Siesta stands grimly before the door, Elmel clinging to her arm with apprehension. She pushes open the heavy, creaking door, stepping into the darkness beyond. Her eyes widen in sheer horror at the scene that greets her. Sprawled on the floor in a pool of blood is their father, a pistol in his cold hand. A promotional notice is displayed. Siesta stares in disbelief at the gruesome sight of her father's apparent suicide. She whirls around, blocking the doorway to prevent a curious Elmel from witnessing the horror inside. Elmel stares in wide-eyed shock. Reeling from the sight, Elmel whispers her father's name in horror. Siesta shouts Elmel's name, quickly shielding her from the gruesome scene. Holding her sister, Siesta resolves to return to the mansion immediately. She finds the timing of his apparent suicide deeply suspicious. She wonders who benefits from his death, realizing it is the perfect opportunity for someone to create chaos. The world seems to shatter around them in a cascade of broken fragments. As Elmel sleeps, Siesta fears she will be the next target. Siesta gives an order, which her blue-haired maid accepts without question. The maid understands Siesta's plan, to lure out the enemy by isolating herself. She decides to leave a butterfly as a magical beacon, promising to return if needed. Surrounded by butterflies, she departs as the maid wishes her well. She walks away alone, leaving the worried maid behind. She worries that her allies might become targets as well. She tries to leave, but Nicholas calls out her name, stopping her. "Ba?" He pulls her close, insisting he has something urgent to tell her. He considers that Lord Arius's nearby room is no longer occupied. As he leans in to whisper, she realizes the gravity of the situation. They stand together, a tense and serious mood settling between them. Memory surfaces of them as children, hiding together and worrying about being caught. Back in the present, he walks with her, calling her name softly. He watches her with concern as she seems lost in thought. Before a grand door, he promises to explain everything from the start. After he explains, she realizes his information is valuable and suspects a connection between Prince Vivian and her father. He confirms Lord Arius vanished right after the succession ceremony. They enter a study, hoping to find some leftover evidence. As she waits by the desk, he begins searching the bookshelves. He finds a letter and urgently shows it to her. The letter reveals a plot to frame her after sealing a powerful ability in a bracelet. She realizes the letter's author is the one who sent the cursed bracelet. He looks over her shoulder, both focused on the damning evidence. Vowing to expose the true mastermind, she realizes her family members were just pawns. After a thorough search of her father's room, she finds no other similar letters. Meanwhile, Elmel remains unconscious, muttering feverishly in her sleep. Following her father's death, vicious rumors began to spread, branding her a cursed child. She concludes her enemies are threatened by her legitimate claim as family head. Elsewhere, Lady Vivienne reads a letter, learns of Arius's death, and worries for Siesta. Siesta reads the letter of concern from Lady Vivienne. She tells her maid, Jessica, that she is leaving for the castle. Upon her arrival at the castle, Lady Vivienne greets her warmly. Lady Vivienne embraces her, expressing her relief at seeing her. Over a lavish meal, Lady Vivienne offers her a gift to cheer her up. Lady Vivienne watches her with a shrewd, calculating gaze. Lord Nicholas stands by, his expression stern and unreadable. Surprised, Siesta sees Lady Vivienne order Nicholas to present the gift. He reveals the golden bracelet, and Siesta angrily demands to know why he has it. Her eyes blaze with fury and betrayal. She grabs him for an explanation, but he claims he had no other choice. Across the table, Lady Vivienne sips her tea with a knowing, triumphant smile. He grabs her, threatening her remaining family if she defies him. Lady Vivienne mockingly denies killing them with her own hands. She leans in, dismissing the nature of Siesta's ability. Pushing Siesta down, she reveals her power is that of the saint. She smirks, recalling a time she played hide-and-seek with her and Nicholas. In a flashback, she remembers searching for them and finally spotting them hiding together. The memory shows her cornering a young Siesta, grabbing her arm. A young Nicholas demands she stop, but a young Vivienne claims she is the one in pain. She explodes with rage, screaming that the saint's power should have been hers. Back in the present, she confesses to burning all evidence of the saint and ordering Arius to confine Siesta. She explains her actions were necessary to keep Siesta's true identity a secret. Claiming she had no other choice, she smiles with sinister satisfaction. She tells a stunned Siesta that her understanding has come far too late. Nicholas appears behind her, his expression grim as he agrees. He grabs Siesta's wrist, and dark thorns erupt from the cursed bracelet as Vivienne smirks. Together, they lead a defeated Siesta away from the room. He tells her that he must obey, because a knight's oath is absolute. Elsewhere, vicious rumors spread that Siesta is a cursed child who murdered her family. In a bedroom, the blue-haired maid, Jessica, greets a newly awakened Elmel. Bah! Elmel jolts awake in a panic, desperately asking for her sister. She laments that if only she had remembered sooner, she could have helped. The maid questions what Elmel means by remembered. Elmel reveals their father's gruesome death triggered her long-lost memories. She recalls her mother serving Empress Elizabeth and overhearing a prophecy about the saint. The memory continues, showing the Empress's death, followed by her own mother's bloody demise. A drop of blood falls onto her small hands in the haunting vision. Sobbing, Elmel grabs the maid, crying out that her mother was murdered. She explains that her memories were returning, which is why she felt such pride in Siesta's defiance. A flashback shows her, watching Siesta, realizing her own forgotten past gave her courage. Elmel believes her memories can save Siesta, but the maid warns that the estate is being watched. She argues frantically that if they do nothing, her sister will be executed for a crime she didn't commit. I don't want her to die, she cries, her desperation moving the maid. From the gardens below, a cloaked figure gazes up at the mansion window. The red-haired Hans recalls Siesta's words, sensing that something terrible has happened. In a dark cell, Siesta resigns herself to her fate, thinking it's always the same. Yet she smiles faintly, concluding that this life wasn't so bad after all. She fondly remembers the allies she gained, her maid, her sister, and Hans. Surrounded by a vision of flowers, she closes her eyes in peaceful acceptance. A sudden memory of a young Nicholas calling her name snaps her eyes open. She recalls how she buried the painful memories of her past deep inside her heart. In a flashback, a young Nicholas apologizes tearfully for being unable to help her. Young Siesta comforts him, insisting he did try to protect her. The memory ends with him vowing to protect Siesta when he grows up. Back in her cell, Siesta's expression is filled with a somber understanding. She realizes he kept his promise, though she never noticed it until now. Nicholas appears at her cell door, formally calling her full name. He leads her toward a guillotine, where a massive crowd is gathered. As Vivienne holds her arms, Nicholas announces Siesta's execution for the murder of her family. The newly crowned Vivienne addresses the crowd, feigning an apology for misjudging Siesta. A woman in the crowd watches the proceedings with deep concern. Vivian gloats internally, believing her manipulation ensures no one will ever know Siesta is the true saintess. As Vivian feigns a prayer, Siesta thinks to herself that the false saintess is about to be revealed. A holy man in white and gold robes appears, his expression somber. Elmel arrives at the execution grounds with Hans and Jessica, noting how unprecedented this is. The holy man addresses Elmel, acknowledging her desire to save Siesta. Elmel looks back at him with unwavering determination. Siesta confidently tells her that she is not making things up. Elmel calls out the holy man's name, Gorbera, startling the crowd, who recall a maid named Lilia. She declares before everyone that her mother was murdered by Lady Vivian to silence her. Siesta watches the shocking accusation, her expression unreadable. Elsewhere, the red-haired Hans, now named Ryan, confronts Vivian, revealing her assassins confessed to taking her orders. He demands to know why she sent assassins, but she scoffs, telling him not to side with a sinner. Elmel's voice rings out, declaring that Vivian is the real sinner. She accuses Vivian of not being royal or the saintess, a truth she overheard from the Empress, but Vivian coolly tells her to be quiet. Elmel presses on, accusing Vivian of using her mother for her own gain. She reveals an ornate golden book, declaring Vivian also stole the Book of Prophecies. Vivian's composure shatters as she stares at the book in utter shock. A memory flashes in Vivian's mind of the moment she first saw the book. Siesta's eyes widen as she too begins to remember. The memory fades into a haze of understanding. Holding the book in her memory, Siesta realizes it's the one Vivian was talking about. Back in the present, Elmel holds the book open towards a stunned Vivian and her allies. As the book clicks open, Elmel shouts, "Stop," at a recoiling Vivian. The crowd murmurs as a prophecy is about to be revealed. Elmel reads from the book, revealing the prophecy of a butterfly pattern that marks the true saintess's regeneration. As Vivian and Siesta's faces are contrasted, in the crowd, two men realize that Lady Vivian has no such butterfly pattern. A nervous Vivian understands her scheme is unraveling. Hans looks on intently as Elmel holds the Book of Prophecies. He recalls the moment he saved Siesta, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Standing behind Siesta, Nicholas smirks, encouraging her. Elmel proudly declares that the true saintess is her sister Siesta, prompting Vivian to scream that it's all a lie. Vivian lunges forward, desperately trying to snatch the evidence from Elmel. Now holding the book, Vivian panics, shouting that it shouldn't exist. Her face twists into a mask of pure rage and disbelief. Nicholas restrains her, explaining the Book of Prophecies was supposedly destroyed with the Empress. A serene smile spreads across Siesta's face. She looks upon the cornered Vivian with a triumphant smirk. Siesta asserts her freedom as Vivian grabs her scepter to prove her power, but Siesta counters, vowing to purge the wicked. Surrounded by glowing flowers and butterflies, Siesta's true power begins to awaken. A brilliant butterfly pattern glows within her purple iris. Eek Vivian cries out as radiant butterflies swarm around her, a testament to Siesta's power. With a great whoosh, Siesta sends the scepter flying, embedding it powerfully into the execution platform. She calmly reaches down and claims the glowing scepter for herself. With a confident smile, she tells a smirking Hans to leave everything to her as the scepter pulses with energy. As she raises the scepter high, the crowd gasps, asking each other if they saw the sign. A spectator confirms seeing the butterfly pattern as Vivian watches in horrified disbelief. Nicholas reveals to Vivian that he knew of the poison in the bracelet and implies he was the one who switched it out, begging her to surrender. With his sword at her throat, a defeated Vivian accuses him of betrayal. Nicholas stares back at her, his expression cold and resolute. She screams his name, her voice filled with fury and despair. Siesta addresses the stunned crowd, explaining the true power of the scepter as she raises it, bathing them in its holy light. Siesta reveals that powders were placed inside the cane. She declares Vivian's miracles were a trick, proving she has no divine power, as a furious Vivian growls. The townspeople in the crowd look on in stunned silence. Siesta announces that she will leave the final judgment to the people gathered there. As Siesta walks away, the fallen Vivian mutters that the real problem is her not being a princess. A man in the crowd stands up, demanding they have the right to know the truth. Siesta calmly agrees to their request. Hans promises that the three great noble families will investigate and bring the truth to light. A knight informs Vivian that she is being restrained, and she furiously demands to know how they dare treat a princess this way. He coolly replies that what the people want is the disclosure of the truth. He challenges her to be confident if she has nothing to hide, leaving her speechless with rage. Siesta watches the proceedings with a cool, unblinking gaze. Vivian thinks to herself that she has many supporters and vows that she will stage a comeback. With her hands now bound in rope, Vivian is led away by the night. Siesta smirks, thinking to herself, if that's how you want it. In a dark prison cell, a guard informs Vivian she will be staying there for a while. She smirks defiantly, annoyed that so many people are still trying to obstruct her path. Lying on her cot, she recalls being raised as the only princess in a family that had no male heirs. She reflects on her ambition to become a magnificent queen and guide the Hitrui kingdom. A memory shows a younger Vivian, who never once doubted her destiny. She recalls the moment she first questioned her identity, wondering if she was truly not a princess. A flashback reveals a dying woman admitting Vivian is not the emperor's true child, as Vivian reels from the thought of not having royal blood. In her memory, she grips her dress in denial, unable to accept the truth. The memory of the woman on her deathbed lingers. As a mansion burns, Vivian resolves to crush everyone who disparages her. The memory of a woman's bloody, murdered body flashes through her mind. She remembers confronting a young Siesta, furiously demanding why she has the power that should have been hers. She decided it was fine if people mistook Siesta's Saintess power for a mere family ability. A simple shot of her white heels marks a step in her dark plan. She resolved that by eliminating anything troublesome, she could rewrite the truth so no one would ever know Siesta was the Saintess. In her mind's eye, she sees herself on the throne as Vivian Bloodfield, reigning as both princess and saintess. A vision of a dying man with purple hair shows him trying to declare himself the true head of the family before collapsing in a pool of blood. Vivian recalls thinking how troublesome it was for Siesta's power to manifest. In a flashback, Heirs confronts a hooded Vivian, reminding her of all he's done for her, but she simply says, things have changed. Heirs recalls Vivian planting the seed of doubt, telling him Siesta wasn't his child. He confronts her, realizing she was the one who was troubled by Siesta's existence. Splat! Just as Heirs realizes Siesta is the Saintess, his throat is slit by the hooded figure. Holding a smoking pistol, the hooded Vivian coldly thinks, I did it again. Back in her cell, she wonders why everyone is so mean. Her discarded shoe lying on the dirty floor. Lying bound on her cot, she laments that this is her fate, even though she is the Saintess. A spider's web illustrates her strategy, absorbing everyone around her to counter those who threatened her. In a flashback, nobles celebrate a young man's power, declaring the Hakarayan family's future is secure. The red-haired Ryan looks flustered, stating his desire to continue working with House Urkula. A silver-haired man stands beside Ryan, his expression grim. He recalls how nobles who once sought his favor abandoned him for the more powerful Ryan. He reflects on his past, despised for associating with commoners, and fearing his own power would be overshadowed, as he recalls the name Ide. A blonde woman in a purple dress smiles warmly at Eid. Eid looks downcast as the woman, revealing an intricate tattoo on her back, speaks to him. He thinks about jealousy and hatred, acknowledging that he understands those feelings all too well. The blonde woman looks on with a complicated expression. Eid recalls praising the blonde woman for being a powerful role model, a compliment she gratefully accepts.